Chair.
Mr Chair, firstly I just want to say that I was very surprised to see that the government had shifted this from being what has traditionally been a conscience issue to whipping their whole caucus to vote in one particular way. And it's disappointing, Mr Chair, because we do look back over the record of this particular issue and we see that over the last 10 years it has been brought to this House 4 times, all times where members were given the opportunity to vote according to their own conscience, and tonight, Mr Chair, the National Government have taken that opportunity away from their own caucus. I did hear Marama Davidson talking about public interests and the public's right to choose, and I guess that really has to be reflected in this chamber when it comes to that issue as well. So, as I said, it is disappointing that they haven't been given that opportunity. Particularly, and it is important to note, when you look back over the track record of this issue when it has been brought to the House, and the fact that actually within the national government there have been a national party, there have been varying opinions on what needs to happen with this particular issue. So I really do feel for the national government members tonight in not having that opportunity. I'm sure that many of them are disappointed that they can't vote according to their conscience and instead have been told what they need to think and how they need to vote. It's disappointing, particularly because I know that many of the people who would have opposed what the government have put up from the national government's own benches would have done so actually based on religious grounds. And so to have that religious freedom removed from your own whips, from your own leadership, is incredibly disappointing. So I just needed to make that point before we move into some of the other issues that I have with this particular bill. I think the major issue that I have looking at part 1 is that this simply does pass the buck on to local councils, which will create a shambles of different rules across the country. And that's what we've got to be concerned about, Mr Chair, is there won't be any consistency. People won't know when you're in one particular area whether or not the shops are open, closed. You move to one area, you have to work there. You're living in another area, you don't have to work there on particular days. So there's going to be a high level of inconsistency because of what the national government is proposing, and because of that inconsistency we can expect a shambles to unravel. But I guess most of us here and the general public are used to a shambles unravelling because of that national government actually. We are concerned, we are the party for workers, everybody knows that, and we believe that workers deserve to have some guaranteed days off, Mr Chair. We believe that actually, as Marama Davidson said and others on this side of the House have said in the House tonight, that actually there are plenty of days in the year for people to shop. We don't need to be adding more days and taking away a few of the protected days that we had sectioned off, so that actually people were guaranteed particular days off. And it is unrealistic, Mr Chair, to say that people can refuse to work on Easter Sunday because people who do will be penalised. There are power relationships in any workplace, and so it's going to be very difficult for someone to turn down their boss when they're asked to actually work on these days, Mr Chair. Mr Chair, it's disappointing that in this bill and just in general that the national government are not proposing any extra compensation for working on Easter Sunday. They expect people to give up this important family time, this important rest time, this important break from working without recognising it as a public holiday. And I think the general public would be absolutely shocked by that, because we've always seen that as a sacred public holiday. And so the fact that now they're going to expect people to work or hand it over to councils to make the decision on whether people should or should not work on those particular days, Mr Chair, but not put any safeguards in place in this bill to ensure that actually they would be getting paid extra compensation is incredibly disappointing, and it just goes to show again that the national government has no regard for workers, and that's really what we're talking about when we're looking at this bill, Mr Chair. We're concerned that this will be one more cost pushed on to councils at a time when this government is pressuring councils to lower costs, and that's a very valid point that needs to be made. And Mr Chair, just going back to the section 1 of the bill, looking at it. I also want to point out, and this came up because of a moment, Mr. Chair, with Sir William Seal and a call that you made earlier that you did correct, Mr. Chair, and I'm not criticising the call that you made, but even just looking at the drawing up of this bill, you know, we're talking about the fact that what the government is proposing will result in a shambles, but even the way that this has been sectioned off is incredibly hard to read. So I can see why, Mr. Chair, you had difficulty before and got confused about the two different parts, because we have a Part 2 trading on Easter Sunday and we have a Part 2 transitional savings, but actually not knowing that the Part 2 trading on Easter Sunday section is actually part of the Principal Act. It's not a new part, it's not a part of the bill, so it could actually, and it is inside Part 1, so it could be debated as part of Part 1, but I just want to say that there seems to have been some, someone's overlooked the fact that this could have been written up a little bit more clearly, so that it could be more easily debated in the House, Mr. Chair. So those are just a few of the points that I have at this point in time. I'm sure I will have some more to discuss later on tonight. Thank you.
I call Rua Bond.